This is Geek Gab with your hosts, Dorrinal and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back. Geek Gab for Saturday, July 30th, 2022. I cannot tell you how much I want to say it's 2023. But it's not. It's still 2022. And it's still July. What?
Are you experiencing time dilation? Because for me, this year's going by way too fast.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I'm just sick of this year already. Just all the things that are happening, and mostly that is political adjacent, so I don't have to talk about them on the show.
Hey, I don't mean to burst your bubble, but most of that stuff's not getting better in the next year.
Oh, darn it!
I didn't mean to burst your bubble. I just want you to. I don't want you to be hurt later. We're gonna do a little bit of pain now for less pain later.
You just don't want me waking up on like January 1st and realizing that it's all still there.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
I've now mentally prepared myself.
You bet. The nice thing is that crazy stuff has happened. I wouldn't hold out hope for crazy stuff to happen, but crazy stuff might happen, and gosh, that would just turn everything around. Or make it worse, whichever.
Has there been cool, crazy stuff happening this last week?
This last week, absolutely nuts. Despite the year by going fast, this week's been the longest week on record because it's been the hottest week I've ever experienced in my area. So we're talking temperatures from 92 to 100 with it's not the rain all the time humidity that you might think, but it's muggy and almost 100 degrees. It's brutal out there. I've been hiding all week in my cool basement in my home office.
But like you lived in Utah for several years, didn't that prepare you for the heat?
Yeah, it did. I can take a little bit of heat. There's two exceptions here. The one is that in Utah, having a swamp cooler or an air conditioner is common, and here it isn't. The other thing is that Utah prepares you for one thing and one thing only. That's 110-degree heat with zero humidity.
Yes.
So that you can just fry an egg on any metal surface, and sitting in the car, either with the windows down or the air conditioning blowing, every part of your body that is in contact with a seat rather than the air, it has a slick sheen of sweat. Which Utah's brutal in that particular case. So
my
yeah,
boy does not lie. He is not lying, folks. That is exactly what Utah is.
It's nuts. I didn't mind it. I don't think Utah's my place, my forever home. So that's one of the reasons I left. And anyway. So yeah, that's what it's been like. So I do have some interesting stuff to talk about. I mentioned in the show notes movies. So spent an evening hiding from the heat in a movie theater. Saw a movie I wouldn't have otherwise seen. We get to talk about Nope today.
But no, I want to go back to that. That's actually a really good thing to do when it's super hot, because the theater pays for air conditioning usually, unless it's broken down. Or unless it's like one of those teeny tiny like local movie theaters. You go to a chain theater and a heat wave, that's some fresh, crisp air conditioning for the couple hours you're in there. That's a good way to get some heat off you.
It's a great deal. In fact, it wasn't until I visited my brother in Los Angeles that I figured it out. Because I mean, other than the the hometown of Hollywood, I was like, why is going to the theater such a big deal? You're in Southern California in the summer, like go do stuff. And he goes, dude, it's 100 degrees out. Everybody wants to spend 2 hours in a dark room eating popcorn.
No, but you saw me in a dark room.
Sorry, the internet garbled your words there, DW. What was that?
You saw a movie in a dark room.
I saw a movie in a dark room. Yeah, we're going to talk about Nope. Do you want to hear about it?
Did you watch the thing I recommended on Amazon that we were also going to talk about?
No, I didn't.
I set you up for a perfect line right there.
Nope.
Yeah.
Sorry. Got it. I'm a little slow today.
Okay, well, I can talk about that, but it is really good. I'll talk about that later. But yeah, let's hear about Nope, because I haven't avoided his movies. I just haven't seen any of them because, well, let me tell you, folks, I've been working 12-hour days for the last 2 months, with a couple of rare exceptions when I get too burned out to continue doing that. Really try not to do that all the time. Just end up doing that.
Well, I mean, I get what you're saying. Nope is the latest movie from Jordan Peele. If you haven't seen his movies, he's from Key and Peele fame. And
he did Get Out,
and Us. And well, I mean, you don't have to make excuses. You watch the commercials. He's got a particular style and a particular cast, and you can tell. I don't think this movie's for me. Right? Yeah, which was probably the case with Get Out. I heard that Us is a little more just weird horror, and Nope. Nope, of course, is a great name for a horror or a sort of weird story movie. Just the trailer alone said, I don't know if that's for me, but that title is perfect.
Well, I mean, that's what any sane person would say in a horror movie, right?
Right. Exactly. Just nope. But so what can I say about it? I was pleasantly surprised because it wasn't all the things that you might imagine it to be. It wasn't a cheesy horror movie. It wasn't
thinly veiled metaphor for black and white relations in America in 2022. It wasn't that.
Exactly. It wasn't that. But it wasn't straight horror, and it wasn't straight comedy. It had a lot of humor, a lot of dark humor, not a pun, and it was entertaining. As it's actually done as sort of a series of vignettes, all centered around this horse ranch, and there's a movie monster in it, and I don't know how to say this without spoiling it, but the I don't say the vibe and character that you get from the trailer is what you get in the movie. Crazy stuff is happening here in Southern California. These characters are trying to figure it out or not die or do something about it. And it was really entertainingly done. Chat loves it too. Jeff Rowe and Catholic Lancer. They put it on my radar as a hey, let's go see this movie. Just for the air conditioning, really.
By the way, that is one of my favorite hobbies. Not dying. Is high on my personal list of hobbies.
That's a strong hobby. More people should take that up. Yeah, obviously I'm trying not to spoil too much, but yeah, there's the horse ranch, there's a monster and other weird things going on, but it's more than that, and it's also less than that, right? It is Peele's not interested in making high art or anything like that. Like, he knows that movies are fun, disposable entertainment, and so he's going to make a fun movie about the characters that seem realistic in a completely crazy, unrealistic scenario, and he just has fun with it. And bonus spoiler for all the anime fans at home, there's a beautiful homage at the end of the movie. If you're an old school anime fan, go see Nope. Because it's nothing like you expected, unless what you want is a fun popcorn flick. Good stuff.
All right.
I just wish more movie makers were like that. That stop trying to be Oscar bait or trying to do something important or serious with your thriller or something like that. Especially with science fiction stuff. They play everything straight, but at the same time, as you're playing it straight, the only thing you can do is just, nope, I'm out, nope. because that's how you would react in that situation.
Okay, that does sound fun. Yeah. I don't have any questions. I feel like I now know what the movie is like.
I do highly recommend it. You're going to forget all about it next month, but whenever someone else mentions it, you'll be like, oh yeah, that was fun. I liked that movie.
All right. Should we jump to the next one?
What did you see that was so awesome that you forgot?
I didn't forget. I told you to watch it so we could have a discussion, but no.
Yeah, right. I do not do streaming services in my home office. I skipped it.
Oh, see, I got Amazon Prime to get stuff shipped to me fast, and one of the things you get with Amazon Prime is a whole bunch of other stuff that they throw on to make you think that it's okay to keep Amazon Prime, even though they've increased the price by like 60% over the last couple of years. And one of those is the Amazon Prime movie streaming service. And so I get everything on Amazon Prime movie streaming service basically for free. Or as an added benefit of something I was always going to be paying for anyway. So, I mean, I use Amazon Prime, the shipping much time, or at least frequently enough that it's still of value to me. I just bought a copy of the first Horse Clans novel, literally the 1982 paperback version. It was the only copy on the entire Amazon site that didn't cost. Other paperback copies are going for like $98, and I bought the only copy that was for sale for $5 with $3 shipping. I don't know how that happened, but if anybody else wants to go buy a copy of the Horse Clans and you notice that the prices are insane, I bought the last same price copy. You could thank me personally, literally, for buying the last same copy. That is my fault.
Ruining it for everyone.
I don't feel bad about that. I really don't. Anyways, my point is I was on Amazon Prime, and the number one series on all of Amazon Prime is not Wheel of Time. Shocker. And it is not Jack Reacher, which I've heard is really, really good. Shocker. It is not the Harry somebody series that Larry Correia really likes, which I've heard from Larry Correia is really, really good. Hey, what's that Korean movie he keeps on recommending that I keep on not seeing?
Oh, the one with the knife fight? I forget the name.
Yeah, so do I. Anybody
I've seen it. Absolutely brutal. But I don't
anybody in
remember
the
the name.
audience, if you can remember, I want to watch it. I just haven't because I'm working 12-hour days. See, it's not Jordan Peele movies. It's everything I don't watch. But anyways, it's called The Terminal List. It's got Guardians of the Galaxy Star-Lord
Chris
in it.
Pratt.
Chris Pratt, who I really like as an actor. He's a fun actor. He does a great job. It is now the #1 series on Amazon Prime, and it deserves it. Unlike the Lord of the Rings series, which is coming out in September, this series deserves to be #1. The Lord of the Rings will not deserve to be #1, but it will be anyway because people are going to watch it just to see of the name. Anyways, Chris Pratt plays a Navy SEAL. They did a phenomenal job on research for this. You can just tell that the tactics, the stances he takes as he, clears a room. They went to a lot of trouble and got great technical guys to make them look and act and move like Navy SEALs. Because if you've seen special operations troops in other movies where they've got it right, they do different things that are nevertheless not even cinematically impressive, but you know that they're right. Like when he's holding out his gun when he goes into a dangerous situation in order to keep it from being taken away from him, to keep control of it, his pistol, all the way up against his chest. So it looks like, and then he's hunched over it. It looks really strange. But that is actually the correct way that they do that, to keep control of the gun so that, then he's moving back and forth in this really strange looking way. That's the correct way that they do that. And I don't know, I'm not trying to pass myself off as an expert. I'm not trying to pass myself off as someone who knows more than I do, because I don't. But I have seen literally a few YouTube videos of SEALs and a couple of other people, and that's how they hold the pistols in those situations. So it was nice seeing that, because usually in movies what you need to do, and you need to do this because you're making a movie, it has to look good, is to do things that look cool but absolutely do not work in a real fight. And that's fine. They're movies. That's why you have those bright spanking lights going off everywhere, because bullets don't really make that kind of light when you're shooting at someone, but you need it to show people where bullet impacts are happening so they can feel the visceral kind of tension that the hero's being shot at. They don't do that in this series either. They went for this really grounded, gritty realism, and it was just nice to see. It's a good change of pace. So it's not really an action movie. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of action in the show. There's a lot of, grounded combat in the show, but it's not an action movie. They're not trying to do the over-the-top stuff. And I love the over-the-top stuff. Everybody knows that. And listen to the show for any length of time. I love action movies. Love them. But they did a really grounded thing with this show, and it's brilliant to watch. It's awesome. The plot line is he plays a Navy SEAL who is after a high-value target, and this is not really a spoiler because it's the first 15 minutes of the first episode. Okay? So this is the setup to the series. This tells you what the entire series is going to be about. His group of SEALs, his team, gets ambushed. And the rest of the show is about him chasing down and eliminating the people responsible for the ambush. And shortly, I don't know if I want to say that or not. It came as a surprise to me, so I'll leave it as a surprise to you. If you read any articles about it, you will be told this. So, I mean, it's been out for several weeks now. All the episodes are out. You can watch the whole thing, binge watch, or, watch once a week or whatever. I would highly recommend it. Chris Pratt turns in an excellent performance. All the other major characters in the show turn in excellent performances. It is enjoyable. It is a revenge flick. And that's also something I really like. I like revenge flicks. The gal who played Elektra that was married to Ben Affleck. Jennifer Garner, thank you. She did one called Peppermint. That was a great flick that I reviewed on the show here. But yeah, this is a revenge flick broken up into 8 episodes, and none of them are wasted. None of them are marking time. They all have a point. They all have steps to move through. They all have people. The terminal list is the list of people who he keeps discovering who need to be brought to justice for the ambush of his team. And so he goes through the list. It is phenomenal. It is tragic. And he's going up this chain of criminality and terrorism, and it takes him into different places. And it is at the same time being gritty and dark in places. It is not so dark you cannot stop enjoying it. It is not so dark it becomes dreary or grim or depressing. It is not there to lecture you. It is not there to, it touches on various things, but they're just touched on. They're not pointed out and fingers shook at you. It's not an agenda show. Obviously, he's a veteran. He comes back from the theater, and so they notice that. They see that. They don't just, sweep that under the rug. He goes into the VA, and he has people saying, you need to go to therapy. All your team got wiped out. You're the sole survivor. You have survivor's guilt. You need to, go in for counseling. He says, no, I don't need counseling. And I say, look, so many veterans commit suicide every day. Obviously, that's a real conversation that they really would have with a real veteran whose entire team got killed in action, on intel that he brought the team from his contact. So yeah, that's touched on, that's mentioned, but it's not there to preach at you. It's not there to make you feel guilty or to be an issue. That's just something that's there. And you know what? If you're watching the show and you feel like, oh yeah, that is important, I want to go, whatever, do something, that's fine. It is relatable to real life while not being preachy and not pushing anything. It's just there because it's there, because it has to be there, because that's just the way those things would play out. So I like that. I like movies that just have real stuff there that would be real stuff. If you had a movie where a house burned down and somebody's kid was killed, that never happens in this show, by the way. Having people talk to the mom or dad and say, look, you want to go to counseling because this is a traumatic experience, that's just real life. There's no message or agenda with putting that in the movie or the TV show or the book. So what I'm saying is they did a really, really good job with their show. And it is quote unquote right wing only to the extent that it deals with issues of honor, deals with issues of soldiers who have obligations to each other when they were in theater, when they were operating together, when they were under fire, and obligations that extend beyond death. That even though they've been killed, he still has obligations to those men. He still has obligations to his brothers. And it is a powerful motivation what happens. And then the stakes get up. What happens gets intensified. Those are just like, the table stakes. That's just what you get in the first episode. And then things go up and up from there. And it is great. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. It was well worth my time. I think there's 8 episodes, and I did not waste any minute of those 8 hours watching the show.
Love to hear it. I don't have anything to add except I may have to check it out.
So, yeah, that's my review. Go see it. Watch it if you have, Amazon Prime. It's well worth watching. It's really, really good. That's it.
That's it. That's the show. What else did you have on your list for today? I really want to get to, the goings on in D&D and Terralopolis and everything like that. But if you had something else to bring up, now's the time.
Well, we actually had a theme for this show because a bunch of stuff I watched just kind of dovetailed together, and then I wanted to toss in something D&D that would dovetail with those on the end. So let's dump D&D on the end because we always talk about that for like half an hour at the beginning of the show.
It's the best part of the show.
So I watched Everything Everywhere All at Once. And that's the apparently really, really popular by Studio A24, who keeps on doing all of those kind of off-kilter horror movies. They did The Green Room, and they did something that I could have told you about last night because I remembered it and it was great, but I haven't remembered it today. And that's because, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Uncut Gems, which was great.
Midsummer. Adam Sandler one, right?
Yeah, Adam Sandler. Great movie. They did Midsummer, which I haven't seen, and I don't think I would see. It's just not my cup of tea. They've done a lot of what you would normally call artsy movies, but that happened to be good. Like they did The Witch, Ex Machina. They did Spring Breakers with the guy who got canceled, who was everywhere for a while. I can't remember any names. You're my backup name dude.
I don't have this guy. The guy that got canceled and was everywhere is pretty wide net to cast.
Was
he also married to Ben Affleck?
Franco? No, I can't remember.
You got me.
I am. My brain is fried. I got 4.5 hours of sleep last night, so you will really, really have to just be impressed. James Franco was in Spring Breakers with the who's who of starlets at the time: Selena Gomez, Vanessa Hudgens, Ashley Benson, so on and so forth. It was kind of a gritty street horror. But if you've seen the list of movies, I've got Ex Machina, The Witch, all those things. It's so they're kind of artsy horror movies or artsy movies in general. And the Bling Ring with I am clicked into Wikipedia, so I'm just going to pretend like I remembered it. Directed by Sofia Coppola, and it has Emma Watson in it.
Why?
It's about a bunch of really, really rich kids who go through and for thrills, they rob stuff. I don't know, saw it. And a Swiss Army Man who had Harry Potter in it, actually. I'm just going to keep naming these. Daniel Radcliffe and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I'm just going to keep naming these until you say, okay.
Are you just listing random movies now? Is that what this is? Hang on. Dark City, The Empire Strikes Back, Alien, and Being John Malkovich. That's my list.
They had Moonbase 8, that really long, boring movie that I haven't seen because it's really long and boring. With oh wait, no, I'm thinking of a different movie. That's a TV comedy series. What? Anyways, you see who A24 is. They make a lot of movies that are horror movies that are kind of a little bit artsy. So This is a little bit artsy multiverse movie series. It stars Michelle Yeoh, who is the martial arts phenom. Probably got on everybody's radar with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. If you're old. And has started a ton of stuff after that. It's great. She's a phenomenal actress. And I'm not going to say what she's most recently been on because it was awful. It was awful. She was too good for the show. She was too good for all the people who were on the TV show. She was too good for the network that the show was on. She was too good for the producers and the companies that made the show. And I'm not going to talk about it anymore because I hated it and it sucked. But Michelle Yeoh, genius. Hey, I'm not going to mention it. It defiles her name for me to bring.
You've wasted too much breath on it already.
Yeah. So I liked the show. I liked the movie. But then again, I'm predisposed to like multiversal stuff. I've always liked that alternate history and multiversal stuff ever since I was a little kid. I've always liked alt history stuff. And which explains why I like, why I glommed on to Torg almost immediately just from reading a little bit about it in an article for the local Intermountain Gaming Association here in Utah back in 1990. That's all it took. One little article, and I wanted to, play the game. It's about a lady whose life has never gone anywhere near the way she wants it. Everything she's ever wanted to do, everything she's ever dreamed of doing has always failed. And that may have been her fault. It may have been that she just kept on having dreams and jumping from one to another and never settled down and got the discipline to do any one of them well. Or it may have been just unfortunate circumstances. Anyway, she finds out through some weird circumstances that in another universe, she was a brilliant scientist who invented technology that lets you mind jump into yourself in another universe. But she also found out that someone has gone crazy and is trying to wreak havoc across all the universes. And that she is the only one who can put a stop to it because she is such a loser that has done so little with her life and that she is at the center of a cluster of universes where she made something of herself that she has in all these other alternate universes right around her. She was so interested in doing things and fantastically succeeded in these other universes that she's actually capable of great mind traveling, that she can go into all these other universes close to her and borrow the talents of those alternate universe hers. So the universe that's close to her, she actually learned martial arts and became a martial arts master and a movie star. So she can go to that universe and borrow her martial arts skill to fight against these enemies of this great evil. And so on and so forth. All of the skills and talents she might need, she can borrow, because all of the dreams that she always had, she actually succeeded at in other universes. And then the rest of the movie is about her fighting off this great evil. And obviously I wanted to see it because it was a multiversal movie. It was about alternate histories. It was about, it's not about big time alternate histories. It's not about, okay, this is a world where Abraham Lincoln wasn't shot. This is a world where, the human race evolved out of pumpkins, although there's one that's sort of kind of like that. Two worlds that are sort of kind of like that. It is really about a family drama, about her and her husband and her daughter. And it's about the relationships between those three and how they developed in all of these alternate worlds. And it helps her to, while she is jumping from world to world or borrowing skills from world to world, she sees into her life and sees the sacrifices she had to make in order to become successful, and sees why she didn't make those sacrifices in this world. And that's why she's stuck in this place where she didn't succeed as she wanted, struggling, and where her family is struggling. So did I like it? Yes, I liked it. I thought it was great. The googly eyes are not a big thing. They're not actually, I'm just referring to the trailer now, if you've seen the trailer. They're not actually, she does not go to an alternate universes where googly eyes are all over people. They're like, which is what the trailers made you think. There's a bit of a misdirect. I liked it. I thought it was a good movie. I enjoyed it. In some places, it's a family drama. So there is a lot of martial arts action that is really cool. There's some scatological humor that is funny, but is also scatological. So be careful who you show it to or who you see it with. I don't remember there being any actual nudity ever. And there's no outright sexual content other than scatological stuff. It's a modern artsy movie. There's some quote unquote countercultural stuff in it. But I enjoyed the movie. It was worth watching. I'm done.
You're done.
You're stunned. You're
I'm absolutely stunned by artsy multi-universal film. Is that the theme that we're tying into?
I hope not, because the next show isn't artsy.
What is it?
The next show in our multiversal trail of, well, I don't know. I'm just glad we didn't save Doctor Strange for this show. We had so much other stuff to talk about. Rick and Morty! I watched Rick and Morty.
Oh, word.
I watched all the Ricks and all the Mortys. And all the Ricks and Mortys. And apparently it's actually topical and trendy. It's not just me picking up on a show that I thought was done with. I thought it was canceled after season 5. It's done, it's over, and I'm catching up on it like 2 years later. No, apparently they are renewed through season 10. And there's a new season coming out on September 2nd. So this is actually timely and topical. And I knew that. Absolutely knew that. Absolutely. That's why I sat down and watched this show.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my quick review of Rick and Morty. It's not funny until episode 8 of the first season. Those last 3 episodes were actually pretty decent. Season 2 is pretty decent humor. Season 3 is the blockbuster pop culture penetration season, and it's really funny in most places, but not in the way that Rick and Morty people apparently have told people that it's funny. And then season 4 and season 5 were largely duds. There was still some funny stuff in it, but it wasn't as funny as the first 2 seasons, and it was mainly not funny. And season 6 is coming out on September 2nd. But I promised more in depth than that. Rick and Morty is for those of you that don't know, a multiverse show about a psychopath grandfather and his pushover grandson and the rest of their family, who go on multiversal adventures. They have a portal gun, and they use this portal gun to jump from alternate universe to alternate universe. And also, they go on some intergalactic adventures where they jump from, they go to other planets and things like that. It's made by Dan Harmon, who also made Community, but it is pretty much nothing like Community, although a bunch of actors who were in Community show up in the show pretty frequently. Keith David, who is contractually bound to be in everything, shows up quite often. He also plays, quote unquote, the black guy president who isn't President Obama, but is President Obama, but isn't. For the seasons of the show that were set during.
I love Keith David. He's in everything because his voice is amazing.
Yes, he's got an awesome voice. I started playing the updated HD version of Modern Warfare 2 last night, and I was getting yelled at by a sergeant to do stuff in the very first section of the game. And you know who was yelling at me as the black sergeant?
Had to be Keith David.
Had to be Keith David. Absolutely. I was like, awesome. That's Keith David. And of course, the General Shepard was Lance Henriksen. So that was just an awesome way to begin the game right there. Getting yelled at in one ear by Lance Henriksen and the other ear by Keith David. I can't imagine a better way to begin a video game than that. Anyways, back to Rick and Morty. I promised people I would talk about Szechuan sauce and Pickle Rick because absolutely it was pointless and there was no reason for me to talk about him. So, of course, I promised to do it because that's the kind of humor you have on Rick and Morty. And no, that's not why I promised to do that. I just made that up right now. I just made that up right now to make it seem like there was some meta thinking behind that, but there wasn't. I lied to you.
Misdirection. It was misdirection.
No, it wasn't even misdirection. I just lied. Pickle Rick was a funny episode in that a lot of the stuff they did in the episode was hilarious. Pickle Rick itself, the notion that Rick, who's a mad scientist, turned himself into a pickle just to get a family therapy wasn't funny. It isn't funny. It just laid there as a joke, being dead.
Absolutely. It's heavy-handed, and we get the point. And maybe it's an answer to all the people who realize that Rick's actually a scumbag. But they played it off as a joke that wasn't funny.
All of these people apparently were trying to say that just the Pickle Rick itself as a joke was funny, and we're trying to pass it off like they're smart and smarter than other people to get that joke.
Oh, because it's lol random.
Or whatever. I don't know. I didn't read these arguments when they happened because I didn't watch Rick and Morty literally like 4 weeks ago. I'm just catching up on the show. I had nothing to do with the culture of the show or reading articles about it or anything. I watched the show purely for the show in the pure sense of binging the show, and I didn't do anything else with it. So, I'm not privy to the discussion around it. I was not. And Dan Harmon likes to quote unquote engage with the internet culture of a show. He did that on Community a lot. A lot of things that happen on Community were because of things the fans said. I did not engage with the culture of Rick and Morty, so I was not in conversation with Dan or with the fans. I'm just here to tell you, Pickle Rick, not a funny joke. People who said they were smarter than everyone else because they laughed at that just for that were not smarter than everyone else. They were just fronting. But the show itself did have funny stuff in it. And I laughed at a lot of the stuff in that show. So I don't know how that plays out on your own personal should I watch this meter. But I thought that was funny. What was the other thing I said I would talk about the show? Oh, Szechuan sauce. Apparently, and I was never rich enough to buy McDonald's at the time this came out. For the Mulan movie in the 1990s, the Disney animated movie in the 1990s, they released a new sauce for McDonald's Chicken McNuggets called Szechuan sauce. And in one single episode of Rick and Morty, Rick talks about how awesome he thinks Szechuan sauce is. And he actually goes to an alternate universe where they still make it to get some Szechuan sauce for chicken nuggets. And, there's some, dangerous thing that's tied to it that he risks life and limb of him and some other people, so on and so forth. So it led to fans going kind of nuts about it, and McDonald's eventually bringing back Szechuan sauce in the real world. Literally, McDonald's literally brought back Szechuan sauce. So whatever you say about the show, and this was in the third season, this was in the good season when, well, like I said, it was having a pop culture impact. They caused the bringing back of the Szechuan sauce. And I vaguely remember this. I don't know if I actually got any Szechuan sauce to taste it. I think I might have. I don't remember being super wowed enough to get it again. So I liked a lot of the concepts for the cross-dimensional worlds were actually genuinely clever. Dan Harmon was good at starting the show with a stinger that made you want to watch the episode just to figure out what the hell was going on or where he would take the concept. And a lot of the stuff in season 2, season 3, and those last 3 episodes of season 1 were genuinely funny. Season 4 and 5 dived off into a lot more swearing and a lot more sexual material, and the level of actual humor dropped sharply. Also, he has an opinion about the characters on the show that made him stop watching, which I'll let him do now.
The characters on the show are
the characters.
Sorry?
Yeah, the characters
are awful. They're terrible, and everything is their fault, and I want all of them to fail all the time. There's there's no character of redeeming quality in the show. As you said at the top, uh, even the kid Morty, who's sort of being dragged around by his crazy grandfather, he's just a pushover. They, you know, they make they go through extravagant efforts to make sure that that he and his dad in particular are losers. Um, just not worth it for the show that's not as funny as everybody on Reddit seems to think.
I
was angry about that. I didn't know I was angry about that.
and maybe the show is really, really overhyped by a group of people. I mean, I could see that, thinking that this is a thinking man's comedy that's so smarter than everybody else.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's science, man. It's the science. They use science to go to other worlds and science themselves out of problems. It's not. It is not a thinking man's cartoon. It deals with a lot of concepts that used to be rare. That used to be like, not all that common. But Spider-Man No Way Home was a multiversal movie, and it was like one of the top grossing Marvel movie of all time now. And then Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was a smash hit. And the phrase "the darkest timeline" is portraying normie culture, or at least political normie culture on Twitter, and a lot of other, internet-aware culture of normies, people who are normies on the internet. So you've got to think that multiverses and the concept of there being timelines and them being different, not just in the notion that time played out differently there, that the Nazis won there or that the Confederacy won there, but where actually things are different there, that, physics is different, or the ground is rubber, or, clouds are cotton candy, and ants weave gold, or whatever, that's become a common thing in pop culture nowadays. That's common enough that people understand it. It's like when it's analogy, highfalutin science analogy coming, that if you understand it, you are unique, highly intelligent, better than your fellow man. Just like Rick and Morty, right? If you understand it, you are better than your fellow man. Back in the days when the theory of relativity was first introduced, somebody said that only 6 people on the planet could explain it. But nowadays, we're actually literally teaching it in high school to high school students, and people who pay attention in class can understand it because it's been digested enough that we can teach it well enough that it's spread out and penetrated the culture and people can understand it. It's no longer new. It's part of everything we swallow in the culture, right? Literally 2009 Star Trek begins with alternate timeline. And we talk about reboots on different timelines all the time. In major movies that have penetrated the popular culture, Marvel had the major plot line of the Infinity War sequel being, hey, we're changing the timeline. Frickin' 1985 had Back to the Future about things getting erased from timelines and timelines changing. And you do not get more mainstream than Back to the Future, okay? There is no more mainstream movie than Back to the Future. That defines mainstream movies, okay? We have had literally 2 generations of people raised with alternate universes and alternate timelines in their consciousness. This is no longer an obscure little concept limited to geekdom, limited to people who read science fiction or who read comics. Mainstream, a long time ago. You are not smarter than everyone else because you watch this show. And nothing in this show is so complicated that other people are not going to grasp it. It does not make you a better person. So it is, and it's absolutely clear to me that is the crux of the zeitgeist right now in culture is multiversal stuff. Just between Doctor Strange, just between the Spider-Man movie and between Everything Everywhere All at Once. I mean, this is emerging from the cultural zeitgeist. I don't know how long it's going to last, but it has come out. It has unearthed itself. And so people, whatever they're thinking, they're not better than anyone else. Rick and Morty is a show that, like a lot of shows, had a rough beginning. Like the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation is crap. I've heard a lot of people say the first season of a lot of shows are garbage and you have to really give them a first season to get on their feet. I don't know that that's true or not, but definitely the first season of The Next Generation was just awful. And they needed to get to the second season to get really good. And Rick and Morty, most of the first season was awful. The last 3 episodes of the first season, decent. Second and third season, great. Fourth and fifth season, not really decent. Although the concepts they were playing with were interesting enough. And you got to remember, it's not like I was watching this show as a regular person to keep watching it. I was watching it because I wanted to review it for the show. So on that level, I just kept watching it because I just kept watching it. And you got to remember some of the things I have just kept watching. It's not bad. It was not painful. It did not make me wish that I could hammer nails in my head to distract myself from the pain. But there are some caveats to watching it. All the characters are awful. That didn't actually bother me. That's what the show was. It has bothered me in other times and places. With this show, didn't bother me. And I was kind of detached from the characters. I didn't care about the characters, but I was interested in all the hijinks and antics and jokes. So no, I didn't really care about the characters. So I guess I went a different direction than my compatriot here, but I'm not saying he's wrong. I just had a different reaction to it. It didn't make me hurl away the show in disgust. It just made me stop caring. Also, Rick burps a lot and he farts a lot. If scatological humor like that kind of disgusts you, this should be done to your skin. That's it. I'm done with that show.
Everybody should be done with that show. Yeah, to your point about the characters, I mean, I know it's tough to compare it to the best, but compare it to Seinfeld, which is a show about horrible people. I mean, it's a show about nothing, but the characters are awful people. In fact, they end up in jail at the end of the show for all their horrible crimes. But the jokes were good. The situations were genuinely funny. And for actually, I agree with you. Season 2, the jokes were really funny in season 2, and that's it. If it's a vehicle for jokes, not some highbrow, highfalutin humor. There's nothing highbrow about it.
Yeah. Okay, let's do AD&D real quick.
Hey, how's Trollopolis going?
Now we had a good session. I absolutely refused to DM this week because I've been working 12-hour days for the last 2 months. I may have mentioned that. And so we went back to the cave we had hit last week, and we were hunting down a werewolf, which apparently is Schrodinger's werewolf. Whenever we look for it, it isn't there. It's we get to hear it howling every now and then, but then we go looking for it and it wasn't there. We killed our way to what seemed like a bunch of treasure, but when you divided it in 6 ways, it wasn't a bunch of treasure. And my character is going to be stuck at the levels he's stuck at for a long time. So I'm just settling in for some reflexive. Really, what I'm doing is I keep on hearing all of these adventuring hooks being thrown out, and I'm sorting them in order of what seems like it'll have the most treasure.
Good luck with that.
I just get treasure, level up. That's in fact, they made a joke about it this last session, because after we were done in a room, we came in, we killed the monsters, everybody was ready to move on for the room, and I'm like, where's the treasure? Or is there any treasure? Was actually my question. Is there any treasure? We literally were going to walk away from the room that had treasure in it. They didn't even look for it until I said, is there treasure? So the only reason we got treasure out of that room is because I was like, is there treasure in this room? Because I wanted treasure so I could level up eventually.
All right, here's something about AD&D First Edition, and I have no experience playing, but I have experience with the dungeon generator and Gary Gygax's modules, and if there's anything in the room, then there's a good chance that there's treasure hidden somewhere in that room or a secret door in the room. You don't go into a room and not search for treasure.
I will give you a secret. Modules, even modules written by Gary Gygax, or prepared adventures, tend to give out more treasure than the random tables do, or more treasure than the treasure types on monsters do. And both Brian and Jeff were listening to this. I'm not doing this for my own benefit, but if you're running the game strictly by random treasure and random dungeon rooms, your players are getting far fewer magic items, and they're going to be getting far fewer jewelry and gems and things like that than they typically do in first edition prepared adventures. I'm not saying you should run prepared adventures, and I'm not saying you should change that. I'm just saying I have noticed that. We did another round of rolling for random treasure, and I'm happy to say that I was personally responsible for rolling treasure on 5,000 GP of gold. So, me actually rolling low on percentile dice got the party 5,000 extra GP. Not that did it. I'm not trying to claim that as any credit. I just felt okay about that. I was like, okay, I feel like I have contributed now with my lucky random computerized dice roller on my phone.
Oh, that's a good point. I think that is because it's all over the writing in the Dungeon Master's Guide that big treasure hauls were a problem. Like B2 Keep on the Borderlands is infamously stingy on treasure. And as you say, the treasure tables are a little, what can I say? They're a little sparse, especially at low levels of a dungeon. But I think that's deliberate. It's mentioned at least 2 or 3 times in the book, in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Hey, when you're starting a game, it's up to you to determine what kind of treasure magic items your players get, because you're in full control of how quickly they attain wealth and power.
See, it's mainly what I'm talking about is I am talking about also magic items. We have very, very few magic items for being. Right now, we've actually succeeded at getting to be a party of generally fifth level adventurers, fourth and fifth level adventurers. And then we have like the two OP people they call us, which is Almariki, who's a fighter, mage, thief, elf, who is generally fourth and fifth in all those classes. And then my simple wandering mendicant, who is a fifth level Wujen, and so because of that gets weird Oriental Adventures powers. But with a party of fourth and fifth level adventures, it's actually pretty easy for first level characters to survive to third or fourth level. And then, once you're up to third or fourth level, as long as you're running away from obviously super powerful things and not being stupid on the battlefield, you'll probably be okay. But we just have I'm arguing with my DM live on the air because he's in the chat responding to the things I'm saying, and I'm trying not to, because this really wasn't about arguing with my DM. I was just making a comment about the random charts in the DMG.
All I'm saying is that being stupid on the battlefield is one of my favorite things. That sounds awful.
The DMG random treasure charts are really stingy with magic items, and
very stingy with magic items,
especially permanent magic items. And
go ahead.
I think that ideally, I would like to see the party have one or two more magic items among the party than we do. Mm-hmm. But that's just me. And to go with the theme today, dimensional stuff, I didn't think I could loathe and despise 4th edition more. But then I found out 4th edition, D&D. Then I found out that I have, not as a deliberate tactic, but just because I didn't really care all that much, I just kind of kept myself from paying attention to 4th edition. I was out of role-playing during the years that 4th edition was out. For various reasons, I was out of role-playing. And so I didn't really know 4th edition very, very well. My horizon of understanding of D&D stops with 3rd edition. And I knew a lot about 3rd edition. I was exceptionally well read on 3rd edition. I was the local expert on 3rd edition in the gaming club at the University of Utah. I read some stuff this last week about 4th edition's Manual of Planes, and I was flabbergasted. I was offended, legitimately offended. I'm a very hard to offend person. So since we were talking about multiversal stuff, and what I was offended by was their planar cosmology being junked, the outer planes great wheel and the inner planes elemental, para-elemental, and quasi-elemental planes being junked. And maybe some of those were junked in 2nd edition. I don't know. I got all ticked off, and I thought we could talk about it for the last part of the show because screw them people.
Well, you come to the right place. I lived on Planescape in the 2nd edition days. So what'd you find out?
Let me see if I can do this.
I have the cosmology in 4th edition. I've got a nice diagram to show if you'd like to see it.
You got the fancy diagram, right?
Oh, no, I got the fancy one. Only the best for our audience.
I want to show this diagram. because this is, can you pop that up?
You bet.
This diagram is what they put in the DMG of the inner and outer planes. That's it. This is all of them. All of the inner and all of the outer planes in the DMG. Can you see my cursor?
Maybe. I can't. Oh, yeah, it's visible.
So down at the bottom, this is a primordial chaos or elemental chaos. And down at the bottom is the abyss, because the abyss gets to be a real plane. This is the prime material plane or the material plane or whatever they called it. These are the mirror planes. This is Shadowfell. And this is the Feywild. And then this is the Astral Sea. And all these little dots that look like stars are, what do they call them? Divine Islands.
Mm-hmm.
And they're what used to be the outer planes, the Great Wheel. And this is it. This is everything. Everything. Top to bottom, left to right, everything. That's it. Everything else that exists in D&D has been swept away. It's gone. Okay, you can stop sharing that screen now. Oh, I am frosted. Now
you are frosted. Why?
I want to read this because these are from official statements. These are direct quotes from the people who were designing this. I don't usually read comments. I don't usually read text on the air that I'm quoting. So I'm going to read this. A new cosmology meant that D&D's classic Great Wheel was being thrown out. The main complaint? Needless symmetry. The Great Wheel required planes for every alignment and every element, whether they were useful in games or not. This new place thing is instead built maximum playability where there was no, quote, dead space. As the designers explained, the Great Wheel had contained good aligned planes that were never used and elemental planes that were too deadly. Now there was opportunity for adventure everywhere. The World Axis also moved D&D's cosmology towards the points of light model. This is particularly obvious in the Astral Sea, where good home bases were goodly and good aligned home bases were now points of light in a rugged, ruined environment. The same model could be found in all the new planes of the D&D multiverse. So literally, they wrecked the elemental planes because they were too tough to adventure in. And they destroyed the Great Wheel because, well, people don't go there anyway. Now, it frosts me so much. It ticks me off so much because these dingleberries, these dingbats, these dummies have no idea why the planes existed. And it's right there in the DMD. In the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Start off playing in the main campaign area as adventurers, raiding dungeons, going on wilderness and city adventures, and then things expand. And you grow and become more powerful, and you adventure against larger and tougher enemies and go deeper in dungeons. And then you expand and go against even tougher enemies. And then you enter, interacting with lords and dukes and kings and the powers of your campaign world. And then you become too powerful for those. And when you do, you have the planes. There's a big paragraph about this. Their Gygax describes it. The elemental planes are not supposed to be another playground for second and third characters. They are not supposed to be happy, frolicky, fun time for people with 12 hit points to their name. They are supposed to be for mature, tough adventurers for whom wars of kingdoms are now too picayune to care about. They are now not matters that are too local, matters that are akin to two clods in a farming village throwing dirt at each other, okay, over whether or not the local milkmaid was going to kiss them at the barn dance, where wars involving entire continents are meaningless. Do you want to put Jeffro's quote up? That last quote? It is beyond consideration to completely destroy a contemplated part of the game that was created for specific reasons, that exists for specific reasons, to destroy it because you don't understand why it's so difficult. It is difficult because it is places to eventually adventure for high-level characters. What these
just
people
like
did,
it's analogous to the outdoors adventures when the players are done with their initial dungeon or town, that they go out into the wilderness, and all of a sudden all the monsters are greater and more difficult.
They made it the kindergarten version of D&D.
I want to read Jeffro's quote here for anybody who's not watching on YouTube. He says, "It's very important for there to always be a greater challenge than you can imagine handling, especially for a campaign that is intended to last 6 or more years, as Gary intended. Or as Gary expected, rather."
That's why I didn't want to use this particular diagram, is because it actually kind of makes it look cool. And you think, oh yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. It's got lightning everywhere and flames at the bottom, the flames. And it's not cool. It's nothing. There's nothing there. They took away everything.
Where is that quote from? Who said that?
Oh, that quote is from, I was contemplating buying the Manual of the Planes. I think I said that already. On every PDF entry under the specific PDF you're looking at on Drive-Through RPG for the Wizards of the Coast, they had a historian research the history of that particular volume. So they had a historian research the history of the 4th edition Manual of the Planes. And this historian's name is Shannon Appelkline, editor-in-chief of RPG.net, author of Designers and Dragons, A History of the Role-Playing Industry Told One Company at a Time. And so she took quotes from the various, literally the designers of 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So that's not speculation. That is literally the quotes of the people who made the game. They said, this is too tough for players, so we can't do it. We can't do it too tough. We got to make it more accessible for low-level adventurers. It's just like, no. That's not why the planes are there. They're not to be accessible to low-level adventurers. They are the capstone of a career. They are everything you look forward to, even they exist when you start playing D&D. Because, in order to survive in the elemental plane of fire, you have to have spells or magic items, preferably magic items that are persistent, just to get there and live your life and live. You have to have ways to survive fire damage, be immune to fire, ways to breathe. And that's just a plane where you can pretty easily move through. I mean, how are you going to do that on the elemental plane of Earth? You have to stretch your creativity as a player to come up with ways to survive on the elemental plane of Earth. Much less, elemental plane of water, easy. That's just an underwater adventure. Elemental plane of air, that's a gimme. You're floating through air. That's just a fly spell or a fly ring or whatever. But earth and fire, now you're really jumping up the difficulty. And then there's magma, ooze, and then you start going towards the positive material plane. You get into lightning, or the negative material plane. You get into ash. All of these are different challenges that all require players to be creative. They all require people to think, to plan, to gather resources. And then going to hell, going to Gehenna, going to all of these other places is just, it's new experiences. It's new ways to survive the world with an entire plane, not just a monster, not just a dungeon of evil creatures, but an entire plane of evil. Where everything in that plane, from the air you breathe to the plants you're walking past, is trying to kill you. And come the hell on. You don't need to make that easier for people. You need to make that hard so that it is a fitting challenge for high-level characters.
Interesting.
It offends me that they castrated the outer planes, because we know what the outer planes are for. It's right there in the DMG. And fine, it's a side effect of them throwing away the play style that Gygax presumed, because they don't have campaigns that last very long typically. But man, I just it makes me sad to see how far D&D has fallen. I'm done talking because we're out of time, but that was thematic with the rest of the show, and I wanted to get that off my chest.
I hear you.
And we have covered everything we promised to cover. Do you have any comments about that now that I'm done ranting?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a few. I mean, first let's go to the chat. Bradford Walker says new D&D sees all spaces as nothing more than levels in a linear walking simulator. That's a good observation. My perspective is slightly different, but I was thinking along the same lines. The uh, the change in fourth edition makes sense because of the change in the game. You mentioned it earlier. The change in the game from a open living world into a theme park, a series of theme parks, and the designers of D&D at that time couldn't do anything with the wheel because the cosmology and the way it related to alignment didn't make sense anymore. And they looked at these settings, or they had ideas about settings, and they're like, no, this isn't a good theme park, right? We need to break this up so that you can just insert whatever, elemental based theme or angel or demon based theme you want into your game. So it makes sense. Uh, Not that it's good. It's perplexing the choices that they made, uh, nuking the standard cosmology chart and turning everything into a gray goo. I understand why they did what they did. It's just that's what modern role playing gaming became. I don't know. Something bothers me about the notion of just having greater challenges. I get the idea that a high level character isn't just going to go dungeon delving, right? There's dealing with domains and kings and princes and angels and demons and gods and things like that. But I mean, if you step back far enough, it is just another theme park, right? The in the context of how does your character deal with these challenges, right? You apply your skills, knowledge, player skill, character skill, ability, resources, whatever, to try to solve that problem, right? It,
Well,
it isn't it isn't really that different.
it is a game.
Yeah.
I mean, games are here's a challenge, use your skill and the tools that you're given within the rules of the game to overcome the challenge. But the thing with the greater challenges is that the nature of the challenges change. You have to
This is
give people.
interesting. Now this is interesting because that goes into the point I wanted to make. I have skimmed the manual of the planes, and I just flipping through the pages. Once you get out of the monster section at the back, there's very little gameable material here. It's all setting in background. There's some mechanics for manipulating the outer planes and uh, portals and things like that. So there's a few rules on how to interact in a general nature, planar hazards, and then it's nonstop description. Just here's the City of Doors, here's the Feywild, here's the Shadowfell, including some potentially really good information like what could you do with this map of Gloomrod? Well, if you had good rules on urban adventures, which might exist in fourth edition, then this would be a great map because you can say, okay, I can partition this into regions and I've got things that I know about and I can have people adventure there, right? But the rest of it's just fluff. And so the people that took apart the alignment system and the outer planes system and that whole existing cosmology, they didn't do it to make something more gameable. They did it to create cool art pieces like I'm showing on stream, where you have this fantastic fight against horrible chaos monsters floating in the chaos, right? Yeah, cool. I mean, that makes a cool scene, in my mind's eye. I bet it'd make a badass miniatures game, but it's not necessarily gameable. They're just looking for all the fluff. That's my objection to the whole idea. Um, was the was Gygax's idea more gameable? Maybe. but it tied the alignment system in to make alignment real, like alignment's a real force in the world. Now in second edition, they tried to make everything gameable, right? As you described, like let's have more rules, let's have more settings, let's have more ideas about what it's like to go to the outer planes, right? And it sort of became an established setting. And that sort of walks the line between way too much fluff and, you know, we're talking about second edition here, tons of fluff, and those sort of gameable stats. And translated that into D&D 3 year later stats. You just look at that stuff and you're like, oh, this is just an adventure written with a challenge level of 15 to 20 instead of 1 to 10, right? So I think my objection isn't necessarily with the changes, but that the changes don't serve anything useful.
Well, if all you're doing and we should really go, we're done. Maybe we should, kick this off some other time. Now we're talking about the difference between low level and high level adventuring versus just why the planes exist and why they screwed it up. I just wanted to say this. The thing is, when I first looked at the player's handbook, when I first ever got a copy of the player's handbook and I first looked at it, I was a kid. I was born in 1973. And so the Monster Manual came out when I was 6. The player's handbook came out when I was 7. When I first got a look at the player's handbook, I looked at those planes in the back. And I was so excited by just looking at them. Just looking at all of the planes, they made me want to go there. They made me want to do things. And the giant cup that I showed at the beginning of the show doesn't inspire me. It doesn't make me want to go anywhere. It doesn't make me want to do anything. It is boring. It is completely drained of all interest. It is a tragedy. And so that's what I want to end on, is that they took something that is imaginative, that is interesting, and they made it into just the worst ever. And
a shiny, polished, unplayable turd.
And you could do like that art piece you showed me. I don't know what those monsters are. I don't know what their alignment is or where they're from. But I immediately thought, well, you could do that on Abyss easily. There could easily be in fact, I think there is a plane of the Abyss that's air with floating stones in it. You could do that, in the elemental plane of air. You could do that in astral space as it currently was. I think you could raid their astral sea for some interesting ideas. Not that the other planes would go there, but you have floating chunks of rock, which was already there before. That's where some of the Gith were living, was in the astral plane with floating chunks of rock. You could put some of that stuff that on a little level was interesting. And maybe the Feywild is actually an interesting idea, not as a replacement for the elemental planes, but as a fairy, literally the fairy that you read about in Lord Dunsany or traditional Traditional fairy
That's what it
tale.
is. That's what it is. It's not actually a replacement for the inner planes. It's just a way to put Fae or the fairy in the D&D cosmology.
Which is fine. That's great. I'm down with that. But don't front like you're, oh yes, we're replacing the elemental planes with something there. No, you just got rid of elemental planes and pushed them together as new, element chaos or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, not to be too pedantic, but yeah, the Feywild and the Shadowfell are not, and were never intended as replacements for the elemental planes. That's what the elemental chaos is. Instead of having distinct elemental planes, they just have elemental chaos, and different elements have different domains in it.
They're a replacement for all of the inner planes.
Yeah, they're all basically in a soup called the elemental chaos.
No, I mean the Feywild and Shadowfell, they're replacements for the inner planes. Those are the new inner planes.
What makes you say that?
Because that's literally what they said. That's literally what the people making the game said.
Well, it's well established that those people are idiots. There's no need to split hairs. If you go read the 4th edition manual of the planes, they're not, and it doesn't read as if they were ever intended to be. The Feywild is a way to insert Fey into the D&D cosmology, and the Shadowfell is just a combination of the plane of shadow and a place for the demi-planes of dread. It's all they are.
They just I got the feeling like they got a lot of harsh feedback after the DMG was published, and so
it looks like they walked a lot of that back in the manual of the planes. I'm not saying it's good, as we flipped through the book, there's not much gameable there, but they did. I mean, they did sort of put all the inner planes into a blender.
Yeah.
And they did the same thing with the outer planes. There's no more wheel. They're all just sort of floating there in the astral, and they're not limited to the alignments.
Yeah. All right. I'm done. I'm mad about explain why I'm mad. I'm not needlessly filled with rage because they changed something. I am as a game designer.
Yeah, let's end with that quote. Who's attributed to? Chesterton? Before you take down a fence, make damn sure you know why it was put up in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get out of here.
I'm done. Thanks so much for the show, DW. That was a lot of fun. I love talking about that stuff. See you guys next week.
Thanks for everybody who turned in live, participated in the chat. Thanks for everybody who will listen later. We just want to let you know, if you wanted to see the pictures and the diagrams that were so important in today's show, remember you can check us out on youtube.com. That is youtube.com/Geek Gab. We are here live every Saturday, or just about every Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And the shows are archived right here, so you can watch them at your leisure, going way, way back. It's episode 286, which means we just, 2-3 more months before we hit episode 300. And we're probably not going to do anything super special for that, because we typically don't. We just nod as anniversaries pass us by and go, hey, that was an anniversary 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I'm gonna do something special for show 300. I'm gonna do it without pants. We also want to let you know that you can get us on Apple iTunes Store, on the Google Play Store, and on SoundCloud.com. Just do a search for Geek Gab. You can download us on the device of your choice, or listen to us on the web. We are signing out for today, folks, but don't you worry. Don't you fret. We will be back.